My name is Rosemary Sullivan. I'm the author of Stalin's Daughter, The Extraordinary and Tumultuous Life of Svetlana Alliluyeva. My book is really, it begins with the defection of Stalin's daughter in 1967, a dramatic moment in the Cold War when Stalin's daughter actually left communist Soviet Union. And then it goes back to her childhood and tries to understand what it would be like to grow up in the shadow of a dictator of Stalin's proportions. Documentation in biography to me is the core of biography. You have to have the narrative drive of a kind of fiction, but everything has to be accounted for. I began by getting permission from Svetlana's American daughter to quote unpublished material, and then I began the search. I started with the Washington International Spy Museum and met the CIA agent who helped Svetlana defect in 1967. I searched under Freedom of Information, the FBI, CIA files, State Department files. And then when I knew enough, I went to Russia and was able to, with the great assistance of a professor at the University of Moscow and my wonderful research assistant, to go to the National Social Archives, and it was a very uncanny experience reading the correspondence between Stalin and his daughter in the flesh. For me, this is my 14th book. Writing is all about language. The challenge with Svetlana was to foreground her story and keep just enough information about the history of the Soviet Union and the 20th century. Each chapter I knew I wanted to end with something that would make you want to read the next page. So for instance, there's a terrifying moment in 1952 when things are going very badly. There's a feeling that there might be a Third World War, etc. Stalin is engaged in a plot against Israel, really. And the chapter ends, and then Stalin died. So I was always aware of the narrative energy needed to keep the story going. The University of Toronto has a wonderful collection of Slavic material. What happened was somebody I had interviewed and who'd become a friend, Lady Jane Renfrew in Cambridge, wrote me and said a friend of Svetlana's, Mary Burkett, had died and had not assigned her legacy. And there were a bunch of her letters, 500 in number, which I had read when I was in the Lake District, that were going up for auction, and we had to do something about this because the Russian oligarchs are going to buy it. So in fact, by telephone, I contacted the auction house and bid. I was that anonymous telephone bid. Somebody in the room who was never identified for me was bidding against me, but in the end I stuck it out and got the letters. So there's a collection of original correspondence from Svetlana from 1995 to 2011, which has photographs, graffiti, and drawings, and so it's a beautiful collection. I also will be giving my own tapes, original tapes of interviews, whether they're with the grandson of Stalin, Sasha Berdonsky, or nephews and nieces, the Russian tapes, the transcriptions, and the tapes with, for instance, Bob Rail, the CIA agent who helped Svetlana defect in '67 from India. And I think this is a very important collection for the university. So my loyalty to the university is one reason I gave it to them. I could never have written this biography had Svetlana still been alive, because the last thing she wanted was somebody else writing her biography. She wanted control of her own story. So I don't think she was ever leaving messages for her biographer. She was leaving messages for her daughter, wonderfully loving messages for her daughter. And when I approached her daughter, Chris Evans, to say that I would like to write a book, and said, a biography of her mother, and said, would I have permission to quote from your mother's unpublished letters and other sources? She said, of course, I want my mother's voice in the book. So that was the way it worked. There is always an aftermath to a book. And so I do expect not to be writing further about Svetlana, but for the resonances of her story to still impact on me. People writing me, tributaries that come out of the book. But in essence, once a book is born, it's got its own autonomous life. My next projects will be, I have a number of journalistic projects I'm working on, particularly with regard to Chile. I have an idea for a book which I don't talk about.